My name is Brynja Dís Valsdóttir. I'm an Icelander. I live in Reykjavik, though I was born in Akureyri in northern Iceland. I'm a college teacher in Iceland. I teach history and I have also taught art history and Russian for beginners and Russian history and a few other subjects, but that's besides my main. And has been my job for now 32 years. But I'm married and I have 2 children. I'm not young anymore. The thing that would come to my mind would probably be fair. And then, of course, like everybody, lockdown and this cramming of people in confined small spaces like home when we are working together. But and also manipulation that you have these that you are sort of controlled from above, and you are not free anymore. But to begin with, fear, and then this lockdown. It has a lot of meaning to me as I'm a teacher and I had to teach distant teaching, and my daughter was studying distant psychology, and my husband is now retired, but he worked in the tourist section, and he was working every day in the tourist section, and now he has had nothing to do. And we were all sort of crammed together with one computer. We could have had more computers, but we are not very technological people because we have usually our technology at our working places. And yeah, so it was very cramped, and well, still it was not all that bad. I'm not. I like being alone, so that was good for me. But for younger people, that was less enjoyable. I'm a teacher, and we had from March 2019 to 2020 in March, we had this announcement of total lockdown of the school, and in 1 week we never realized it was coming to this. It was something that I didn't realize would happen. Actually, it was this began in January, February, and then this lockdown, and in 1 week we had to adjust to completely new technology, all kinds of distant teaching. Teams we mainly used, and all our material had to be changed into distant teaching material, and we had to rethink everything and plan everything differently. And then we taught like that till the end of the term, and we had to evaluate students in a new way and without having them in front of you, and that I found most difficult. Teaching itself was strange in that way that you lost some people that they usually talked, but you also were able to communicate better with people some people that suddenly blossomed when they were not directly in front of you. They suddenly talked and raised their hands in the team's screen and asked for, and I could ask them directly. I was constantly asking them. But people that had a lesser social, status or circumstances, socially sort of disabled circumstances, or were anxious before, or depressed, or had attention deficit, or dyslexic, or whatever there was, were seriously affected by this. I was constantly teaching. I was answering questions and answering phone calls in the evenings and at any time, and we were sort of not directly told to do that, but if I was going to teach, and we had this common goal of sort of beating this thing. So we did it. I was constantly available. But some people I overtaught and some people I missed out, of course. And there was this feeling that I was talking out to the emptiness sometimes. I was speaking to emptiness. I was not sure because I was not sure at the beginning whether I could demand them to be in, that I could see them in their home. It's, very personal for a teacher to go into the homes of everybody. But actually later on, we could ask them to be in photo so we would know if they were there. And then all these exams we had to make for new exams when we were not sure whether they were cheating or not. But we usually did. I saw my daughter take exams without never cheating, of course. She never cheated. And I expect that people don't cheat. It's the rule that you don't cheat, I think. But there are exceptions to that rule. But that was not really important either. It's what was important whether this the education was of any value. I was afraid whether education was losing its value, but probably, you have to have some time to sort of consider whether or not. I did my best. We all did our best. And we really worked hard to sort of, help them. And some of them miss this distant teaching. This autumn, last autumn, when school started or college started, we had this partial teaching. It was that half of the group would be at home and half of the group would be in the school. And you were supposed to be teaching both of them. Half of them on distant teaching and half of them in the school. And then we have this 3-semester teaching. We finish every course in less than 3 months, and then a new course starts. It's called the Lotukerfi in Iceland. It means that the students have something like 4 or 5 subjects, and they finish them. We teach them 8 hours a week. 8 hours a week, and then in 3 months they finish it. And last autumn we skipped we only taught them 6 hours a week, and half of the students were in the school and half of them were at home. That was really tiresome and really difficult. And somewhere, I think in November, we started teaching them again in school because Icelanders beat the pandemic quite well. We will come to that later, how we sort of treated or fought the pandemic. So we were back at school and everything seemed better. And all the way till, I think, a little before Christmas, then there was another lockdown. And that lasted over the Christmas and into January, the middle of January or something like that. And then we were teaching distant teaching from November till, I think, we were teaching distant teaching from November till in January, middle of January. And again, there was teaching at school. And that ended abruptly a little before Easter, few days before Easter. And we felt that as a terrible shock. Everything seemed better. We were back at school. And then suddenly there was a lockdown again. And that really was, a shock again. And but that was not for a long time, because a little after Easter, week after Easter, we were back in school. But all the time we had these sections closed in the college. We could not travel except in our section. We had to go out to go into another section. There were only a certain number in each section. We had a plus 100 students at my college, and only a certain amount could be in each section. We all had masks, and we had masks all the time. And first there was a 2-meter distance rule, then a meter distance rule, and now it's a 2 meter, no, a meter. If we're always with mask and 2 meters distance rule. And we have to sanitize our rooms after the students leave. The students are supposed to do it, but usually I do it, and most of the teachers do it because they are suddenly all out of the room. Vaccinations in Iceland are all state controlled. It's a college where I have to explain. In Iceland, we have university, and we have primary school up to the 10th class, which is 15 to 16. And then we have college from 16. We used to have from 16 to 20. Now it's from 16 to 19, and then university. It's like the college before university, probably in America or something like that. It's not completely university, but it's the age from 16 to, used to be 20 and now 19. But all vaccinations are controlled by the state. And we are being vaccinated now in groups. And I have been vaccinated once with AstraZeneca. And everybody is crying out for Moderna and Pfizer, thinking that is the Rolls and Rolls-Royce of vaccination. It's incredible that when you sit down and talk to people, they're talking about different vaccinations. And what did you get? And what do you think you are getting? And when are you getting your vaccination? It's a really, I was thinking about, we sat together, a few teachers up in the cafeteria, everybody talking about vaccination. But it's state controlled, and they are now, I think they were trying to vaccinate 14,000 people yesterday or something like that. We are only 300 and something thousand, but it's going pretty well, actually. And we are down to, it started with the oldest, then people with underlying diseases, then people working in the healthcare, and people working with youngsters or something like that. But the teachers are, they're starting, I think, now with teachers, and going down slowly. I think I was in the 8th group or something like that. And I was vaccinated in a big sports stadium with some 15 healthcare. Actually, we would have called them nurses because most of them were female, and with a line of vaccinations. And we sat on chairs, some 100 people in the hall, and they all shouted out, "Move!" And then they moved between and vaccinated you. Chick, 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 chick. It was really, quite sort of, well, not funny, but it was a little bizarre. And it was my age, which was vaccinated. And I was really shocked to see how old everybody was around me, but they were my age. It's all state controlled. You get a message into your telephone. You are to meet at this certain hour, not at this certain place, to be vaccinated. Don't miss it. And then they send sometimes people, if they have leftovers from vaccination, what we call immediate vaccination. Then you just get an hour or something to get to the place to get vaccinated. We are not allowed to sign up for anything ourselves. It's all controlled by the state, and it's all decided on groups. What groups needed first, what groups needed most, and then it goes down the line of age from oldest to youngest. Iceland is yesterday. There were no one no one was registered as having, been affected, infected by this. And but we have had very serious measures taken both to control it and to battle its economic effects. Iceland has the last decade or more relied very heavily, long before that, but very seriously the last few years before COVID, on tourism. And tourism is now even bigger than our fisheries, which are really very big too. And tourism, Iceland was receiving some millions of tourists, and we are only 300 and something thousand. They were everywhere in our backyards, everywhere. I'm not saying I don't like tourists, but we had a lot of tourists, and Iceland was very popular, and is very popular. Probably we have a volcanic tourist eruption. You can go there and watch it online. It's a nice eruption. We hope it will stay on this summer, so the tourists will come to see it when they are free of COVID. But this tourism was seriously affected. Not seriously, it was a complete lockdown, and it affected the whole country. It affected the small communities which had hotels, restaurants, service, transport, everything relying on that. And the fisheries are not so much affected by this, of course, and some of the industries, but all this service, was brought to a complete standstill. And air companies and all these bus companies, and this affected seriously a certain age group of Icelanders. The age group which was had the highest unemployment percentage was from 16 to 24, and then women, because they are involved in this branch by working in hotels, restaurants, cleaning, all kinds of service jobs, and then very seriously on those that are of foreign origin. Some of them Icelandic citizens with Icelandic citizenship. We had some 14% of Icelanders are of foreign origin, and quite a lot of them Polish. We have some 20,000 Polish inhabitants we had out of roughly 300,000 Icelanders, which is a big percentage. And they were a very, very sort of good addition to Iceland, very industrious, and brought a lot to our culture, these foreigners from abroad. But they were seriously affected by this because they worked in all kinds of lesser paid sometimes jobs, like service, building, roads, whatever. And this was, and all kinds of industry, and this was brought to a standstill. So they were seriously affected. And a lot of them moved back home when they could, so sadly. And then we have also this, what we call traveling. I don't know the English word for it, traveling workers, which are not, have not citizenship, which come and go. And they were, of course, seriously, they had not access to our system of help, actually. And they are, of course, seriously affected. But richer people were less affected. Women were especially affected, of course, because they work in a lot of, some of them work in, women in Iceland are very sort of equal, actually, in rights, and we are completely equal in rights and everything, and in our jobs. But a lot of women work still in the care industry or the service industry and section, I would say, not industry, sections. And they work in hospitals and kindergartens and, these, and they were affected. And then back home, they were they are more of those that take care. That is just the fact, even though we live in times when it's, more equalization between men and women. It is still true. I know that because women phone me more about their children connected to my work. Fathers sometimes phone when they concerning help more at home concerning natural sciences actually, and it's rarer for fathers to phone me and ask how are you. But the strange things that fathers from groups from those that have a foreign background, the fathers more often phone me than the mothers. Vice versa from Iceland. Very strange. It's like they are sort of, the mothers are. I don't know why. I really don't know why. But what was difficult for this group in Iceland in COVID times, the foreign group of foreign origin, foreign citizen, they all have some Icelandic citizenship, a lot of them, 20,000, but 14%. They sometimes know less than what help they can get. They to read these the suggestions and help the government is offering, and asking for the help they can get to survive through this. So they are at a lesser disadvantage also because of that. And what we call the labor union was especially concerned about this, that the foreigners should get extra care or extra attention because of this deficit. Whether we manage that or not, I'm not sure. But everybody, I had some of the numbers from here. I'm reading them. That 2019, before the COVID, the whole of Iceland had 3.2% out of work. But in 2020, it was for the whole country in September 2020, it was 9% for the whole country. But for some group, it was much bigger and bigger. And in some areas, like in a community outside of Reykjavik, it was up to 20% of out of work. But before that, 3.2 out of work. 2019, you see it's 58% increase. So, but things are looking, the government did a lot of things to help us. And they had it on a personal basis and for companies. On a personal basis, we have of course that if we are out of work, we got to get a certain which is called unemployment wage, which is we have a minimal sort of minimum that you can live on, that you get minimal wages when you're unemployed, and they would sort of do all kinds of things. They would they took down the VIT, they paid it back, the VIT on a lot of things. They allowed us to take out our a certain amount of our pension. They brought down the VIT on, for example, mending houses and cars and whatever. So everybody was mending, using the time to build and mend and whatever. So the hardware store blossomed. But they gave us a check to travel inside Iceland. Not a very big one, but still a check. So we would, stay in hotels last summer. There was not a lockdown last summer. So me and my husband, we traveled the circle of Iceland, and it was not completely paid, not at all by the government, but they gave us a check to set us off. If you don't use it, you lose it. So, Icelanders were traveling in Iceland, and usually they don't travel inside Iceland. They travel to other countries. We're an island, and we want to see the world, not Iceland. So, but now everybody was traveling in Iceland last summer, and that helped these communities that relied on tourism quite a lot. But A lot of other things they did actually. I had this somewhere here. I was trying to read something before, so I wouldn't just not be, telling tales that I thought, but some of this is probably not so scientific. Um, they they also paid people which had been sacked. They paid them, paid the companies a part of the when we lose our jobs. We are paid 3 months or whatever we agreed on. You're never told to leave and then you're not paid for some months afterwards. So the government helped the companies which had to dismiss people, perhaps all of their employees. They helped them pay them, these months that. And for companies, they gave them all kinds of help. They paid what was called partial paying. They paid help to companies that were almost on the verge of shutting down. They gave them loans. They delayed paying loans. They all kinds of reductions. There were all kinds of sort of. It was a kind of a New Deal, like New Deal was in the States in the big, bankruptcy 29 when Theodore Roosevelt came into power. That he paid back from the state, and we did that a lot. So we have been helping companies a lot through this. I don't have the exact numbers. I can find the exact words for this, of course, but there was a lot of help done. There, of course, is a debate in Iceland whether it was rightly done or not rightly done, whether this went to companies that were paying, even were really rich and they didn't need this, and whether some companies should not have gotten this, and whether companies that were paying this and that to their when they sort of have extra money left, they pay to their shareholders a certain amount. That companies that had enough money a little before the COVID to pay the shareholders some milliards even should get then help from the state. It was, a lot of debate about whom to help and how to help. But the state anyway gave a lot of help. It has been affected because I'm pretty sure myself that Iceland will get out of this COVID, but the world, of course, will be changed. And I'm sometimes worry if it is completely sort of changed. And but we are hopeful now. We are getting vaccinated, and if there is not some terrifying new version of this COVID which we can't fight, then we are getting out of it. We are seeing, and it has been. We had the television every day for months and months. The whole nation would be gathered before the television, listening to the head doctor, the head pandemic doctor, and the head of police. And they would tell us how many were infected, how many, what we were supposed to do, and cheering us up or bringing us down or whatever. There was always usually cheering us up. But every day we would sort of gather and listen. And when I think about it, it's very good. But you also think about it that how easy it is now to control everybody, to tell everybody to do this and do that, and wear masks. Are they really effective or not? We all wear them, and we're always with these masks in shops and everywhere. We don't have to wear them when we are walking the streets, but everybody obeys, and we get very nasty and angry when somebody does not obey. I would not dare to go into any shop without a mask. I would be, scolded, and people would get angry. Yeah, there is an anti-mask movement, but it's not very strong in Iceland. It's a few articles about this or something like that, and there of course there are always people who think this is a conspiracy of some groups to control the world, and this has been man-made. I have no opinion on it. I cannot neither decide whether it is how this originated. I have no scientific uh, background of knowing how this all originated, but there is also that is which always see conspiracy. Perhaps there is a conspiracy. I have no idea, but there is a group on that too. There was one thing, of course, we are an island and we depend on input of a lot of goods from abroad. We were not sort of seriously affected by the by a sort of a shortage of anything, not seriously, but of course there was some shortage of some goods, but we have such a lot of. I never felt myself that there was a shortage of anything. Well, I went to Costco, which is a British retail shop, and there was no cat food. But that is so unimportant, from Britain, because there was a ban on import from Britain. But and then this or that was not in stock, and you couldn't get this or that. But it was unimportant because there was such a lot. Now, waiting for, I think, first and foremost, that Americans have started pouring in. Usually we had Germans and from England and from all the European countries and even Russians. But now we are also Americans, but now we are waiting because the Americans are being vaccinated so, effectively. So they have started coming in again. But we have this strict regulations on the border. You have to be tested and you have to go to a quarantine for a certain amount of time. And you have to be tested again before you're released on the streets. And we had a special hotel, which, everybody was put in, and hotels actually, and people had sort of even free meals, but you had to be there. And then some people complained, Icelanders, that they could stay at home, but the government said that we had no control actually of knowing whether people were breaking the quarantine, so they wanted them in some, place where they could follow them. And I think they really follow them. They phone them up and they sort of try to know if the quarantine was in hotels. For Iceland, it was legalized as non legal, I think. So they cannot force them in one place, but they still can force them into a quarantine. First, it was, I think, you had to pay, but it was not all that bad because the hotels were giving a good deal because of empty rooms. But I think in the quarantine where you were forced to stay, all quarantine hotels, you didn't have to pay.
Mm.
Opened that you have to be tested. You have to stay in a quarantine, and those that come from heavily affected areas, they I don't know about if they can show a passport saying I'm vaccinated. I don't think so. I think everybody is, tested and quarantined, but then you can come. You can come. My area is the capital, and it's not different from the rest of Iceland. Actually, it's all centrally, fought and battled, and it's all very central. We have this central control on this all. So in Reykjavik, which was the center of tourism It's of course all the bars, the restaurants, the entertainment places. Reykjavik is a hubbub of these places, and it was a very vibrant, lively city, a real sort of nightclub town. But it's not anymore, and it was, very strange walking the streets. It was like, just Icelanders. What's happening? Well, Icelanders being, of course, from different nationalities, but still, it was not the tourists, and lockdown of all kinds of businesses, and it was a very sort of empty town. That is the feeling, and still is. But it's not. It's the same as everywhere. It's this unemployment. It's the lockdown of businesses and the lockdown of tourism. Reykjavik is both a fishery town and a tourist town. But in the countryside, of course, you have there is the farming, and then there is fisheries, and then there is tourism. Mining and things like that are very little in Iceland. We have aluminium, which is from by electricity from waterfalls. We have no coals, and nothing is heated from. We have green energy everywhere. But of green energy, of course, when you have green energy, you have to destroy some waterfalls and lands. And there has always been a strong opposition, both for and against in Iceland, because when you build electric stations, you destroy land permanently. So, green energy, but destroying at the same time. Bringing this nation very much together in that we have to fight this, and that we have to do it not on an individual basis, but as a nation and as a group, and we stand together in that, and getting us all to obey to that, and very good information, and also they have brought the state very effectively. The government now is right wing and left wing together. So they sort of brought in this mixture of private and of help both to the private sector and to the individual and to the government. I am a teacher, so I was, the lucky one. I'm paid, I don't lose my job. I'm state hired. This is a state school. Most of our education and hospitals is run by the state. So I don't have to fear losing my job. The state has to pay me. And the University of Reykjavik is state owned. There is a university of Iceland. The University of Reykjavik is private, but also gets help from the state, though it is, kind of a private. But they have done that very successfully in sort of keeping us afloat. Nobody starving, really. Some might. There is poverty in Iceland, but they have sort of made us through this. Yes, I think that is what it is to. Everybody was involved in listening every day to the number of people being infected and what to do and how many we could be together, and listening to new rules. And it's sort of, but we are a nation of few. We are 300 and I don't remember the exact number, 300 and something thousand. Yeah, bringing us together to work as a group, fighting a pandemic. Yes, we have like in the past. I don't know how far back I should go. Iceland is a country which was in the 19th century. We were almost, like people, we were almost not part of the modernization. We were not part of the Industrial Revolution. We were, we were poor, and we were only a little above, we were 60, 70,000, and that was how much people the country could support, because we had no technology, no cities, no even villages hardly, and no roads and no harbors and no nothing. And then we got a little industrialized onwards from the 19 by putting machineries in the small boats we fished in. We were really very much like in the Middle Ages in the 19th century. We were medieval people in the 19th century, and have become to be one of the richest countries in the world, one of them. And then after World War II, we got quite rich, actually, because of the Marshall help, and not only because of that, because of a lot of factors from outside. But if we take the 20th century, we had the Spanish pandemic. 1918 was especially hard in Iceland. And out of 15,000 people living in Reykjavik then, 15,000, 10,000 were affected. And people were really dying left and right. And it was a very cold winter. It was called the Great Cold Winter. It was minus a lot in Iceland, 30 or whatever there was, and it was a terrible year. But I don't really know whether the government met it with some really sort of serious measures, because we were a poor country. Then we met seriously the tuberculosis pandemic, which was from 1900 to 1930. We had a special hospital raised, and a quarantine for that. I don't think actually they have learned from a special pandemic. Just the healthcare system in Iceland is very efficient and very, very sort of modern and very sort of effective. And we have had healthcare for everybody, state healthcare, which has been very good. It's getting privatized more and more, and that means usually that the state sector gets worse, because people tend to go to the private section because it's faster, though it's more expensive. And doctors tend to go from the state hospitals to the private section because of better pays. That's the normal. But we've had very, very, very good healthcare. And so I think it's more that we just sort of we have learned, of course, every healthcare has learned from previous. We learned, of course, from the SAR, which was, what was it, 2004 or 8? I don't remember the pandemic of SAR. And then, of course, I don't think anybody learned anything from the, what was the pandemic called, which AIDS. But that was not a pandemic. It was just affecting certain. In the beginning, there was a terrible fear of AIDS, but which is not now, and we are able to fight it also. But it's more just a decision, or a coming together of doctors. And then we have this very good private sector, which is a company which is run by a scientist, which has a big database of a lot of Icelanders, and it's working on research in DNA and in heritage and in all kinds of diseases, and they helped a lot. They sort of took tests on people and things like that. It's called Decode. It's a company that is quite famous, and they helped a lot and had a lot of experience on a lot of things, and they worked with the government healthcare and helped a lot. We are not sitting all together now in front of the television listening. I had to look up how many were affected yesterday or infected. 0. Before we always knew it. And I am not so terribly afraid of contracting the disease. Actually, I was not so afraid of contracting the disease myself. I was so afraid of transmitting it to another person. And it was called, it even got a name for it, the fear of transmitting or shame of transmitting, the shame of putting a whole school perhaps or whatever into quarantine, or your friends or your group or whatever. It was this fear of being the person who made others sick. But now it's not the same. I'm already vaccinated by AstraZeneca, which gives me probably 70% protection, and I'm not afraid anymore. Not seriously afraid. And I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I learned a lot of technology. It's very good for me because I'm 65 and I was getting a little outdated in technology. I was getting afraid that my teaching, I was not using the same technology as young people, and that I was missing out in some fields. And I am very up now in all kinds of technology. And I have realized that I can teach in various ways and I can reach to people. I have talked more to my students in COVID than anybody. I don't think even before directly. I talked a lot to a lot of them before, but not to all of them. There were always some students that didn't respond very much in class. But now I really sort of forced them to answer me on the line. And but I've learned also that you know, the idea of working together is what gets you out of trouble most of the time. Sometimes you can get to it on your own, but the private sector was not what really sort of, except for Decode, which brought us out, but the government, and the healthcare system as a whole, not a single doctor or single doctor. It was no single person. It was working together. And but what it has also taught me is that this is perhaps not the only pandemic that we can have to go through, and that this world will never completely be the same free land, sort of, free spirit world again. I don't know. And it also taught me that it's very easy to control, and the idea of Big Brother is very easy. Actually, it's easy to sort of manipulate you and have all the information everywhere on you. I don't know. It started me thinking more about it. If there is a serious trouble or pandemic, it would be to work together. It would be to fight it together and be optimistic and take care of those that are in a more sensitive group or sector or situation, like we had to do, because that's what makes a society good. That is to have a sound society, which takes care of those that are less fortunate. And that I was very sort of glad when I was reading sort of through all kinds of statistics. I was not sure, but I forgot them as soon as I read them. But and even more of statistics you can see a little. I'm a history teacher, so I printed out a lot. But as soon as I read it, I forgot it. But what I can see is that these measures which we were able to launch is because we pay taxes altogether. We pay a lot of tax, and they were sort of distributed back. Some people were unhappy about their taxes being distributed to the private sector because it's very unusual that the state is taking taxes from us and paying to the private sector, but everybody was helped, private or not private. And so that is the message that a certain kind of socialism, in the sense that not socialism, especially I'm not preaching socialism for the world as a political system for everybody, but certainly this socialism, yes, of helping to staying together and working together. The beautiful idea of socialism was sort of applied in this COVID. The state was paying those that were unfortunate, and not unfortunate, those that needed help, and everybody. But I'm making the state of Iceland too good, actually. It's some sectors of the states are not so good, and there is of course corruption there and here and all kinds of that, but the main idea.